Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time I am talking about my predictions for Nintendo's 2025, and this will be Phase 2 for those predictions. In Phase 1, we discussed the epic lead-up to the launch of Nintendo Switch 2, essentially talking about what may happen in the first half of 2025. But this time, we are going to be talking about that lineup of games that Nintendo will be releasing immediately after the launch of the console. What kind of lineup will Nintendo put together to ensure that the Nintendo Switch 2 comes right out of the gates with incredible success, as so many analysts are predicting it to dominate the market over the next generation or so? Well, I will say, looking at my notes here, I have a hard time believing that Nintendo will not absolutely dominate the competition with the kind of games they may have ready for that first year of Switch 2. And so that's what we're getting into today. But before going forward, let me take this moment to ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit that notification bell, and if you're unsure, watch through this video and then decide. So I'm not going to tell you what I think the launch title for Switch 2 will be in this video, because that will be spoiling Phase 1 if you haven't seen it. I'm trying to structure these videos in a way where you can watch either one in either order, but if you're curious on what I have to say for the first 6 months of 2025 regarding Nintendo, you can check out Phase 1. What I'm focused on here is more so talking about how Nintendo will handle the second half of 2025, and maybe a little bit beyond that as well. The ultimate idea here is that this is the launch year for Nintendo's next generation console, and if they want to have even a reasonable chance of having a similar level of success as the Nintendo Switch, then they're going to need to emulate a lot of the things that work so well for the Nintendo Switch. And some of that's going to be the branding and the marketing for sure, but perhaps the most important element is the games. What kind of games can Nintendo put out in that first year of Switch 2 that will absolutely demand incredible success? Well, the first game that I have in mind for that first month of Switch 2 after the launch, so July, yes, I'm predicting a June launch for Switch 2, I think there's a really good chance that this game is going to be Mario Kart. Why? Because we saw Nintendo do something very similar on Switch 1. In that second month of Nintendo Switch, what did they put out? Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and it went on to become Nintendo's best-selling game of all time, not counting Wii Sports, which does deserve an asterisk because it was bundled with so many Wii consoles. Point is, Mario Kart came out in that second month and was extremely successful. And this time, we could see a brand new Mario Kart, not an enhancement of a game that's been out for a few years already, and that might lead to perhaps even greater success on Switch 2 throughout its lifetime. Now, recently I have talked about the possibility that maybe we don't see Mario Kart until the very end of the fiscal year, so March 2026. And I do think there is a chance of that, for sure. But I see how there's all these accessory leaks going around, and there are these different wheel accessories for the Switch 2, and maybe that's just companies putting that out there preemptively, not really knowing when Mario Kart's coming out. I think there's probably a more likely chance of that. And maybe Nintendo wants to save something like Mario Kart to come out right before the Mario movie in April of 2026, but I do think something like Mario Kart would do the trick to come out very early on for Switch 2, and then maybe instead of using Mario Kart to close out the fiscal year, they use something like maybe a Luigi's Mansion 4, or a brand new Donkey Kong game that might also do pretty well in lead up to the Mario movie in 2026. But moving beyond July, for the month of August, I'm going to predict something that perhaps some people aren't really expecting. But what I'm going to predict is Pokémon Legends ZA. Now, this will be a Nintendo Switch 1 game. We've actually seen from the Pokémon Terra leak that there aren't actually any plans for a Switch 2 version. Now, it's possible that may be outdated info, so perhaps there will still be a Switch 2 version. But something I want to speak on here is that while the Switch 2 is going to become Nintendo's main focus next year, they will still support Switch 1 for some time to come. And so the first half of 2025 will still have a great deal of Switch 1 games, But even afterwards, there will be the occasional game to appeal to the Switch 1 audience that is yet to move over to Switch 2. And so something like a Pokémon Legends ZA in the middle of summer, shortly after launch of Switch 2, I think might be a great way to remind Switch 1 owners, hey, there's still some support for you, but at the same time, because Switch 2 is backwards compatible, this has already been confirmed by Nintendo, it will be able to play Pokémon Legends ZA, and they will be able to market it as a big deal game to play on Switch 2. And on top of that, there has been a lot of speculation and rumors that perhaps the Switch 2 might be able to subtly enhance Switch 1 games. I'm not going to predict that it's an across-the-board thing for every single game that you plug into the console, but I do think with a patch, they will be able to get this done, and perhaps they can still squeeze in an enhanced patch for Legends ZA on Switch 2. And it wouldn't be a vastly improved version of Legends ZA, but it would be an improvement, perhaps with an overall cleaner frame rate and cleaner textures and just a higher resolution. Essentially, a simple remastering of Legends ZA on Switch 2, so it still looks and plays pretty well for the console and can be used as a big deal kind of game for both Switch 1 and Switch 2, and that's what I'm going to predict will be the next game after July. I understand some people might find that that would be an odd time to put Legends ZA. Some people might be saying, well, why wouldn't they come out with Legends ZA early in the year? Well, it's already the end of the year, and they haven't talked about Legends ZA at all yet, so I think it would be unwise to expect an extremely short turnaround where Legends ZA comes out in 2 to 3 months. Not to mention, we haven't seen any sort of branding or marketing or hints from any of Pokemon Company's media to suggest that it's that soon. But then others might say, a lot of mainline Pokemon games come out in November, so why wouldn't you predict it then? There's a couple reasons. One, Pokemon Legends Arceus came out in January, so they've already demonstrated that the Legends games don't necessarily fall under the same pattern of release as the other mainline games. But two, we are expecting that Generation 10 will be coming out in 2026, and if that follows a similar pattern to prior mainline games, then that's probably coming out in the November period or close to that time. And also, given that we didn't see any mainline games come out in this year, they may want to bridge the gap a little bit. And so Legends ZA coming out sort of essentially in the middle of the year, the end of the Scarlet and Violet DLC, and hopefully Generation 10 at the end of 2026. And of course, these are my predictions. I could be wrong, maybe I'm off by a few months here, we shall see. But moving on to the month of September, what some of you may start to notice here is that a lot of my predictions are in line with the codename leaks from Midori from way back earlier this year. And for those who followed those leaks, you may have noticed that we got most of the predictions right for the June Nintendo Direct, because the codename leaks sort of show the games that Nintendo is working on to come out relatively soon. Now, the ones we saw were for Super Mario Party Jamboree and The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, but there were plenty of others that we assume are Switch 2 games. And so one of them, codenamed Spiral, we think is for Splatoon 4. That will be releasing in September. And interestingly, Splatoon 3 came out September 2022. So if Splatoon 4 releases 3 years later, I actually think that would be a pretty reasonable amount of time. Reminder that Splatoon 1 came out in 2015, and then Splatoon 2 released in 2017. So that was a 2-year turnaround. I think it's actually not that much of a stretch to say that we could see a 3-year turnaround from Splatoon 3 to 4, especially when they're going to want to have a new Splatoon game early on for their next generation console. But there's something else I think we could be seeing in September, and that is the release for Nintendo's MMO. Remember how not so long ago Nintendo had this online test that they were keeping very secret, and there was a game that was essentially a massive multiplayer online game, but it was kind of rough? I think they tested it out now, and they'll be releasing it next year, and it'll be made available for all Switch Online members, which is why I'm predicting it to come out in September, because typically we see big NSO updates around that time of the year. And this would also be appealing to Switch 1 owners. Another game that comes out in the second half of 2025 that reminds Switch 1 owners that hey, Nintendo hasn't totally forgotten about them. But moving on to October. This is the month where I think we see the release for 3D Mario, the new next generation Super Mario game that is going to be the headliner for Switch 2. It's going to be an amazing experience, I'm sure. Every time there's a new 3D Mario, it always is, and this one's going to be no different. I wouldn't be surprised if this game goes down as the best-selling 3D Mario game of all time. It's essentially going to be the equivalent to Switch 1's Mario Odyssey. And this time, there won't be a totally brand new 3D Zelda game that will take away some of the spotlight here. 3D Mario is going to be huge. And similar to how Nintendo released Super Mario Odyssey in October of 2017, I think we'll see this new 3D Mario in October of 2025 for Switch 2. But Nintendo will not be done yet. Reminder that Nintendo had a strong lineup all throughout the entire year of 2017, and they're not going to stop after Mario. There will be more. But this next title here will not be a Switch 2 exclusive. It will be another game that will appeal to Switch 1 owners. However, thanks to backwards compatibility, and perhaps also a simple 4K enhancement patch, it would be relevant on Switch 2 as well and would be a fantastic game to release in November. The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD. It won't be a brand new Zelda game, but it will be a Zelda game many fans have been clamoring for many years throughout the Switch era, will probably sell a lot in November, and people will be playing on both Switch 1 and Switch 2, and Nintendo will have found a way to fit in Zelda into launchier Switch 2, while still saving their bigger Zelda titles for a little bit later into the generation. But in December, I believe there will be one more big title. This will be a Switch 2 exclusive. And it's not going to be some sort of casual entry like Fitness Boxing 4. Since this would be the launch year for Switch 2, similar to 2017, I think Nintendo would still want to find a way to get a big title in December, or also like 2018 as well with Smash Bros. But in 2017, what we saw was Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Many people doubted that we would see a title like this come out. Many people thought that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was going to be delayed, but it was not delayed. They made sure to have that game ready at the end of 2017. So I think there will be one more title, and I'm actually going to go back to one of the other codename leaks, Project Legacy, which is believed to be another title from Monolith Soft. But this wouldn't be a Xenoblade game. This would be the new IP that Monolith Soft has been hiring for since 2017, but this year took down the hiring post and has now moved on to hiring for a new RPG for later down the road. The theory is that this game that they've been working on throughout the entire Switch generation, they no longer need to advertise hiring for it, and rather they're actually getting pretty close to completion, and they might just want to fit it out by the end of 2025 in December, so maybe Monolith Soft could have another game that emulates the success of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, where it became the best-selling Xenoblade game because it has continued to sell throughout the entire Switch generation. And this new IP might have even more potential because, well, it's something new where there's not an established audience. They might find a whole new audience for this new generation of Nintendo. Now, I can easily see this game sliding into 2026 because Monolith Soft is also going to be putting out Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition in March, and typically they don't release two big games like this in the same year. However, Monolith Soft has multiple studios. They are constantly doing support work for other different Nintendo projects, and this Project Legacy has been in the works throughout the entire Switch era to some level. I wouldn't be surprised that in this year of 2025, it's an exception year and we see more work from Monolith Soft than expected. But if it's not this new IP from Monolith Soft, what else could fit December? Well, I'm not sure what else would fit. But what I will say is that going into 2026, there's still plenty of other big Nintendo projects that could be ready. Next Level Games may very well be close to finishing Luigi's Mansion 4. It will have been about enough time. There is another codename project that supposedly has been in the works that I think might be the next new Donkey Kong game. Star Fox and F-Zero I do think eventually will make a comeback. Smash Bros. is probably not too far off. Nintendo's also likely trying to get Animal Crossing ready as soon as possible. Even if Splatoon 4 may be coming out in 2025, they may not want to wait as long for the next Animal Crossing like they did for Switch 1. And so I'm not saying any one of these games might be the December game, they could be, but I'm simply saying that there's so many potential titles that could be coming out within the first 2 years of Switch 2, it's going to be incredible. And so looking over what I'm expecting for that second half of 2025, Mario Kart, Pokémon Legends ZA, Splatoon 4, 3D Mario, Wind Waker HD, Monolith Soft's new IP, I think that would be a legendary start to the Switch 2, especially when you account for the strong day one launch lineup as well. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart, thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.